What's going on, everybody? RJ Ochoa here from SB Nation's bloggingtheboys.com. Hope all is well wherever you are. Hope you're happy, safe, healthy. I want to wish you a very happy 4th of July, whatever you're doing, however you're celebrating, whoever you're with. I hope it is a wonderful day. Obviously, if you're watching this after the fact, I hope it was a wonderful day. I do want to let you know before we take any steps further that this video is being recorded well ahead of the 4th of July. I'm actually recording this on Tuesday, July the 2nd. I told you in our latest video that I'm going to be traveling with my family. So trying to get ahead of things, trying to put some stuff in the can so that, you're taken care of while I'm out swimming and gallivanting with my family and whatnot. So this video being recorded on Tuesday. As always, if anything happens, if something substantial or significant happens, you can rest assured I'll hop on the computer. I'll get an article up at bloggingtheboys.com. I'll get a video up here, et cetera, et cetera. So don't worry. But just so you know, that's what we're working with here today. Today, I'm going to remind you that if you haven't, to please subscribe right here to the Blogging the Boys YouTube channel, the most subscribed to individual team channel across all of the SB Nation universe. I talk about the Dallas Cowboys all the time. So if you subscribe, you like the video, you turn on notifications, those things are very much appreciated. Also, if you want to be with me all across the internet, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, or Threads at RJ Ochoa, or on TikTok at rj.ochoa. If you would like to send me an email, you can also do so. rj.ochoa@sbnation.com is the way. If you want to leave a comment down below, obviously that is another option as well. I'm also going to tell you right now that this is the second time that I've said that spiel in the last 7 minutes because I accidentally recorded 5 minutes of this video a moment ago and had my microphone on mute. Thankfully, I realized it only 5 minutes in and not after I recorded the entire thing. So looking again, microphone is good to go. We're good to go. So, yeah, let's go ahead and get into it. This is the latest installment of my Dallas Cowboys roster breakdown series throughout all of the Blogging the Boys universe. As I mentioned, I've also been writing about this subject each and every single time at BTB, so make sure to check out bloggingtheboys.com. You can read the article on the position that we're going to get into today, which is the linebacker group. Now, I have linked to every position group that we've done so far throughout this series down in the description below. I've linked to both the videos and the articles at the site. So either way, however you want to, consume it, it's up to you. But everything is in one nice, neat, and total package available for you down in the description. As I mentioned, there are also links in terms of how to follow me on all the social media platforms that I mentioned. So let's go ahead and get to it. And before we get to the linebackers that are on the team for the Cowboys, because that's the whole purpose of the roster breakdown series, I did want to say one thing, and it's that we should not be underscoring the loss of Leighton Vander Esch. Leighton, of course, retired this offseason. We wish him all the best in his post-football life. I don't think that we have given enough credit or enough whatever to the role that Leighton has played. And he obviously had a very unique career for the Cowboys. That 2018 season was so spectacular with him as a rookie. Injuries caught up to him. And if you remember, when the Cowboys drafted Micah Parsons, initially the evaluation on him was as an off-ball linebacker, which is why some of us had a bit of an issue with it. If you take an off-ball linebacker that high, well, you're not necessarily getting the most bang for your buck relative to, from an asset standpoint. And that being said, it was the Monday after the Cowboys drafted Micah Parsons that they declined the fifth-year option for Leighton Vander Esch, and it seemed like that was spelling the end of his career in Dallas. Leighton ultimately turned in an incredible season and signed another deal with the team, kind of a similar situation to Morris Claiborne. And Leighton has been an important, I would say an incredibly important, a significant part of what the Cowboys have done defending the run over the last 3 years. And we've seen that obviously in this time when he's been out, when he's been injured. And so that being said, look, the Cowboys lost to the Green Bay Packers for a lot of reasons, both offensively and defensively. But one of the biggest reasons was their inability to stop the run. The Cowboys got pushed around by the Packers. Matt LeFeu, a former Dan Quinn disciple, he dared him, right? Matt LeFeu and like Kyle Shanahan and I wouldn't say Sean McVay, but Kyle Shanahan. And we've seen obviously, all these young, people, Mike McDaniel in Miami. I mean, all these dudes who know what Dan Quinn is about. Anytime that Dan Quinn has gone up against them, it has not worked out for them. And that's because they know how to exploit his weaknesses. And Dan Quinn, throughout these last 3 years, when it comes to the linebacker position for the Dallas Cowboys, has had these converted safeties. And it's worked to a large degree. Jaron Kearse obviously had a great little run. Marquise Bell last year had some nice moments, but these are still smaller human beings. That's ultimately what it comes down to. And just to use the example in hand, the Green Bay Packers said, okay, you're going to put these small guys up there. We're going to play 12 personnel. We're going to push you around. We're going to get these tight ends out in space, and we are going to move you. And that's how we're going to have so much success with Aaron Jones or whoever it ultimately was, whether it was the Dolphins or the Bills. I know that's not a Dan Quinn disciple, but you get my point. So Mike Zimmer's in, and Mike Zimmer's obviously reverting to some more classic traditional linebackers from just a physical standpoint, which is certainly great to see. So that being said, let's take a look at what the Cowboys are working with, because Leighton Vander Esch is out, as mentioned, and in is Eric Kendricks. Kendricks was the free agent that made the most sense for the Cowboys, given his connection to Mike Zimmer, their days together with the Minnesota Vikings, although Kendricks is obviously coming off of a season with the Los Angeles Chargers. We'll get to him in a moment. Just rounding out the group, these are my categories as I've defined them. Deone Clark, DeMarvion Overton, who has a really long name. I had to shrink it to fit on that card. LeFeu, Damen Wilson back with the team, and then Willie Harvey, Buddy Johnson, Jason Johnson, and Brock Mockenson. Obviously fighting for some spots if that ultimately winds up being something that is available. That being said, let's get to the top of the group, and that is Eric Kendricks, who, as mentioned, was playing with the Los Angeles Chargers last season, but obviously has the history with Mike Zimmer, which is one of the more important things here. Now, I think maybe some people have forgotten that Kendricks initially agreed to terms with the San Francisco 49ers when free agency began. And then that was like 6 a.m. one day, and then like 6 p.m. that evening, it was reported that he was backing out and signing with the Cowboys. And that was the first external free agent signing for the Cowboys this offseason. And again, I would offer one of the more critical decisions that they made, given Kendricks' familiarity with Mike Zimmer. You have to have somebody out there in this new defense that knows what they're doing, that has played in it, that can kind of execute the calls and things like that. And that's certainly, I think, what Eric Kendricks is going to provide. I think from a contribution standpoint, he can certainly, be Leighton Vander Esch. But again, I don't want to minimize what Leighton brought to the team. Kendricks is an important part. He's going to be a critical part of what the Cowboys do defensively. There's no question about it. He is one of the most important defensive players on this team. But let's move on. Deone Clark had his best season for the Cowboys last year. I don't think there's any doubt about that. His second year with the team, obviously coming out of LSU, that first season in 2022, I think we were all surprised to see him play in general. And so to see him improve, obviously, from year one to year two was great. But now we're in a different era. Now it's year three, and you've got to be that player that we saw with the Tigers. You've got to be that guy that was wearing number 18, which he is, by the way. We'll get to this in a moment, but some number changes. Deone Clark no longer wearing 33. He is wearing 18, which is a historic thing, obviously, at LSU. But that being said, I'm very interested to see how much opportunity Deone Clark is given, because while he makes sense to me to slot in as a starter right now, I don't know how long that will hold because of what we're going to get into in a moment with DeMarvion Overton. But as mentioned, Deone Clark made a significant jump from year one to year two, but this is a different thing now. And now the linebacker group is going to be under a different sort of microscope, and it's going to be under some different tutelage and Mike Zimmer. So can Deone Clark take another step, an important step, a seismic step in year three? That is one of the bigger questions that we're going to have to answer throughout the course of training camp. But whether Deone Clark is given opportunities or not really depends a lot on this man. DeMarvion Overton had an incredible training camp and preseason for the Cowboys before tearing his ACL in the game that also saw the team lose John Stevens Jr. And I think he is far and away the biggest X factor on the team, biggest X factor, certainly on the defense, if you want to argue somebody else on the offensive side of the ball. And what is the reason for that? Well, the reason is that he was incredible last year, right? He was really, really, really good. And I think we were all excited about what he was going to be able to offer the Cowboys. Now, it's worth mentioning, by the way, back to the subject of physical bodies, that DeMarvion Overton is a converted safety. Played safety originally at the University of Texas, the worst school in the great state of Texas, before ultimately, obviously, playing linebacker, the Agent Zero stuff, blah, blah, blah. So doesn't necessarily have the same physical mold, physical makeup in that sense, but I mean, it's still early enough in his NFL career that this isn't the same exact thing as the Marquise Bell experiment, if you catch my drift. That being said, back to putting DeMarvion Overton's picture on the screen. If he hits, then we're really cooking with gas here. Now you have three legitimate options at the very top, obviously, that you can kind of rotate in and play with. If he doesn't hit, well, that's kind of dicey, because the Cowboys have to some degree taken measures with the assumption that he is going to hit, right? The Cowboys, how many times can you remember a quote from Stephen Jones where they've talked about how excited they are about DeMarvion Overton? And we've talked about this with many players in the past, whether they were coming back from injury or suspension or whatever the case may be. You can't depend on these guys. If they hit, great, but you have to look at it as icing on top of the cake. And so the Cowboys have gone about this just a little bit recklessly in my mind, because outside of the fact that DeMarvion Overton is returning from a torn ACL, he's also never played in an NFL game before. And I don't mean to just make a case against him, because I certainly believe in him as a player, and I'm excited to see what he offers the Cowboys. But assuming anything seems a little bit dangerous right now relative to Marvion Overshown, just based on what we've seen so far throughout his NFL career. But obviously, training camp will go a long way towards, calming those concerns or exacerbating those concerns. It is going to be a fascinating subject one way or another. He is, for that specific reason, the ultimate X factor. If he hits, boom. If he doesn't, well, maybe you should have done a little bit more in free agency. Maybe you should have been, interested in signing other players. I don't know. What a bold and innovative idea. But that's DeMarvion Overshown. Let's move on to Maris Liufau, who I'd have a difficult time seeing how Maris Liufau sees a lot of opportunity throughout his rookie season because of the players that we've already talked about. I also mentioned number changes. I forgot to tell you DeMarvion Overshown now wearing number 13. So he's not wearing 35. That's why Maris Liufau is wearing 35. So Deone Clark goes from 33 to 18. DeMarvion Overshown from 35 to 13. And Maris Liufau obviously gets 35. He's a rookie on the team. That being said, the Cowboys did not draft a running back in the 2024 NFL draft. We know that. We also know that the prime opportunity to do so, given the fact that they did not have a fourth-round pick, was the selection late in the third round, their final selection of the third round of that Friday night, when they took Notre Dame linebacker Maris Liufau. That was the spot. So their message, what they indicated to us, was they preferred Maris Liufau so much that they forewent that they forewent the opportunity to draft a running back. Now, they brought Zeke back and all this stuff, and I don't mean to get into that discussion. We talked about running backs already. I mentioned you can go watch that video or read that article. Links in the description down below. But there better be something that you really liked here, and we need to see it sooner rather than later. Now, again, I have a difficult time seeing how we're going to see those contributions from a defensive standpoint, but there's no question that we're going to see them from a special teams one, right? This is Maris Liufau is going to be one of John Fossil's favorite players in all likelihood throughout the course of this season. And again, maybe he can be what we saw from DeMarvion Overshown last year throughout camp. Maybe it's just that magic 35. Maybe he can be somebody who's popping, who's making plays over and over and over again, and he can fight his way into the rotation, so to speak. And a lot of these questions are really difficult to answer right now because we still don't totally know what Mike Zimmer is going to do, how he's going to work his linebackers in. So Maris Liufau, an interesting name to watch, but somebody who carries a different sort of expectation because of the fact that the Cowboys preferred him so much. At least that was the indication by the fact that they drafted him and forewent, to use my favorite word, at running back at the tail end of the third round of the draft. Let's move on. Last player we're going to discuss in a little bit of detail is Damen Wilson, who's obviously making a return to the team. He's had an interesting career so far, obviously bounced around, seen a few different things, seen some different defensive schemes, and I think provides a legitimate point of depth. I think that when this first happened, I think we rolled our eyes a little bit, but Damen Wilson, like I said, I mean, he's seen some things in the NFL. So I think having him around is certainly a good thing, especially when you have such questions in DeMarvion Overshown relative to the inexperience and the return from the injury, relative to Maris Liufau as being a rookie. So you've got somebody in Damen Wilson who you can kind of, depend on at the very least in a moment's notice. And I think that that's ultimately what you're kind of looking for from one of your linebackers further down. I wouldn't call it the depth chart, but further down the roster. So Damen Wilson is kind of a higher floor option than everybody else, but not somebody who I want to see out there on a regular permanent basis. But I like having him as a smash class in case of emergency name in the event that the Cowboys are a bit up a creek in one way, shape, or another. All right, let's take one last look at the overall group here. And all due respect to Willie Harvey, Buddy Johnson, Jason Johnson, and Brock Moggensen, and these are names that you're going to have to really pop. You're going to have to really shine. You're going to have to really do something to obviously, make the roster. And that's what training camp and preseason does, is it offers the opportunities to do so. Now, could the Cowboys sign somebody at linebacker, obviously, throughout the course of training camp? Sure, that's possible. But I think that this position carries a lot of places that they want to be proven right. They're going to give Eric Kendricks every opportunity because of his relation and his relationship and connection to Mike Zimmer. Deone Clark, obviously, is a chance that they took 2 years ago. They want to be proven right on that. DeMarvion Overshown, that goes without saying. They want to be proven right on that, especially all the talking about him that they've done over the course of this offseason. And Maris Liufau, we discussed obviously in detail a moment ago. They want to be proven right because they said, we don't need a running back. We have to have Maris Liufau. So I have a difficult time seeing how they would kind of wave the white flag on any one of these players so early in this overall process. But weirder things have happened. Still, though, this doesn't seem like a position in my mind where we're going to see the Cowboys add somebody to the roster. Boom. That does it for our linebacker discussion. here throughout my Dallas Cowboys roster breakdown series on the Blogging the Boys YouTube channel. If you have not yet, please consider subscribing to the most subscribed to individual team channel across all of the SB Nation universe. As noted, you can follow me, RJ Ochoa, on Twitter, Instagram, or Threads, at RJ Ochoa on TikTok, rj.ochoa, or send me an email. Did I say that already? rj.ochoa@sbnation.com. If you want to leave a comment down below, you can do so as well. That's another great way to get to me. My phone is ringing. Don't know who this is, but I'll get it in a moment. Yeah, that being said, next up, we got cornerbacks. That's coming next week. So I'm going to be recording that this week, but it will be dropping next Tuesday. What's that? July the 9th. So be on the lookout for that. And after that, we'll do safeties, and then we'll be very, very close to Dallas Cowboys training camp finally starting. My name, once again, RJ Ochoa. I tip my hat to all of you. Thank you so much for your time, for hanging out, for subscribing, for liking, for turning on notifications, for whatever you did today. It was hard work, and you did it. And for that, I am eternally grateful. So, yeah, let's go ahead and get out of here. Thank you so much for hanging out, everybody. And what else is there left to say except for see you next time.